Hey, what's up, my friend? Todd Falcone here. Welcome back to another episode here at toddfalcone.com. Okay, so let's talk about the pivot, okay? I think it's a great conversation to have, like learning, when and how do you pivot in your business? First of all, we got to define what a pivot is. A pivot essentially is, okay, moving in a different direction, doing something differently. Many of us had to do that, for example, when we went into COVID a couple years ago, okay? Most certainly the network marketing profession as a whole had to pivot. So, for example, all of the national conferences, all the international conferences, all the live events, all the Super Saturdays, all the training events, all the get-togethers, those things were completely shut down. Everything moved where? Everything moved to Zoom, right? So we had to pivot in this case to Zoom. In-home meetings had to turn into Zoom meetings or whatever they turned into. So we had to pivot because the market conditions forced us to pivot. There was no choice but to pivot. It was either pivot or die is really what the choices were, right? So, but we don't need COVID to force us to pivot to know that we should pivot. So, there are times, for example, like even I'll give you an example in my on the training and speaking side of my business. If a product, and this, I don't even know if this has actually ever happened. I got to think, and I don't want to think too hard while I'm talking to you guys. But, for example, if I had even if I did, I'll use this example. So I've released a number of training programs over the years. How to win in the game of prospecting, boom, one of the top sellers in network marketing. Little black book of scripts. We've crushed that for years. Cracking the code to success exceptionally well. Insider secrets to recruiting professionals. Knocked that out of the park. Continue to every year, year in and year out. Number of other training programs that I produce. Now, there are other products that I've produced that, like for example, I produced a program called 23 Unbreakable Rules of a Master Prospector, and it's a very kind of different style of training that I did, which on that product, that training that was originally on audio CD and now is on MP3. That product sold well, but didn't continue to sell well because, times change, things change over time. And so we pivoted to focusing on other products, just like any store would do. Think about this for a second. If a product is on an end cap, now I know we're not in retail stores and all of that, but you guys will get the drift. If a product is sitting on an end cap display, meaning everybody sees it, it's the most visible spot, the front end cap of a grocery store as an example. People see that and that product is not moving. Then what is the store going to do? Is the store going to sit there and leave that product on an end cap display? Probably not. In fact, what they probably already did do is they realized this is a great seller, and if we put it on an end cap, it's probably going to sell even more because we already know it's a top seller. So they pivoted in that case from taking the product in the regular shelving space and they put it to an end cap display, knowing full well that it's going to sell even more. So there's a lot of things that we need to think about. Now, I'm not saying, hey, go change stuff. Like if something ain't broken, don't change it. And I would be slow to make changes because every time that you make a change that affects the team, that, people resist change. They do. They resist change. And so if they're resisting change and you're, oh my gosh, what is this different thing that we're doing or way of things that we're doing, then that could potentially slow things down. So, but here's the thing, like, let's not even, let me take us out of the helping people in the team situation. Let's just talk about you and what you're doing. Like, okay, if what you're doing is working, then there's probably no need to pivot. If what you're doing is working, but you feel like it could be working more, then okay, that's fine. What I'm doing is working, but I think if we made these small, and I do mean small tweaks or modifications in the way we're doing them, to see if it'll get us a better result, then you might do that. But what you want to do is you want to have enough, what we call sample size, or another way of phrasing it is ample opportunity to know if a strategy or something that you're doing, have you given it a long enough period of time or a large enough sample size, enough exposures to that particular activity to justify or make a decision and say this is working or not working. Like for example, if I was I don't know, I'll just use if I was using some lead source and I bought 5 leads from them and I didn't sponsor anybody from calling 5 people or reaching out to 5 people, is that a large enough sample size to justify whether we should pivot to someplace else? Of course it isn't. Nobody would even say yeah. It's just too small of a sample size. Now, if I called through or I worked 200, 300, 400, 500 of those leads and we had very little to show for it, well, maybe we'll try another lead source. Maybe it's time to pivot. So that now I think you understand what I mean by giving it enough of an opportunity. But again, if you have something that's working, you stick to it. If you want to see if you can improve upon it, don't totally change it, because what you're doing is working. If you make tiny little modifications, and if you make a tiny modification to it, and all of a sudden you're getting less results, then you're going to go back to what you were doing and then maybe change something different. I'll give you a case in point. And this was asked of me. I was doing, several years ago, we were doing live webinars. I recorded this webinar. It was a 46-minute webinar, did an exceptional job of like laying out all the details and, really kind of, by the time people got done with that, they were, okay, I'm in or I'm out. And we had a lot of signups from that. And I had people on the team like, man, 46 minutes, that's really long, even though it was working. And so I looked at it. I'm like, cool. I'll see if we can shorten it. I mean, if we can still get the same results but with less time, that's cool. So I got it down to like I think 30. I shaved like 35 minutes, or no, I mean, shaved it down to like 35 minutes, and like conversions went through the floor. But I gave it ample time. I gave it like 90 days, and we were converting people. But the numbers of people that were signing up after the webinar were, in my mind, far less than we had before. So I went back to the original webinar, put the 46-minute one back on, and enrollments went back up at a higher percentage. So sometimes you pivot and okay, the pivot works. Sometimes the pivot doesn't. You can go back to what you were doing. Okay, oh, see, here we are getting results again. And maybe sometimes you just realize like what we're doing is working and we don't need to change nothing. And we'll just keep doing what's working. Maybe you end up adding something in, we keep doing what's working, but we'll add another avenue or another venue or another way that's an additional method. And I think that as networkers, we should have multiple reaching out, multiple ways of doing things rather than one way. Like for example, I'll give you this quick example. I've talked about this quite a bit in the past. If like your game is Facebook and Facebook is working, that's great. But if your only game is Facebook and that's the only thing that you've got, and you're 100% relying on Facebook and you don't own Facebook and you could be booted off of Facebook, for example, then if you what happens? Like you're totally reliant on this thing that you have no control over. So you put your business in the hands of something you have complete zero control on. You get kicked off of Facebook, you're out of business. So if you have other methods, if you have other means, other ways of building the business outside of that, maybe it's, I don't know, doing, meetups or, other social networking events or attraction marketing that you're doing in other places or whatever you might be doing, that's fine. But if you're only like in one direction and if that one direction gets shut off, you're in trouble. So, when do you pivot? Again, we pivot when we need to. We pivot when what we're doing is not working. We pivot when necessary. We don't pivot for the sake of pivoting. How do we pivot? Well, we just do. Okay. All right. Well, shoot, can't do live events anymore. Oh, Zoom. I guess we'll all go to Zoom. I wish I was smart enough to purchase Zoom stock right at the beginning of COVID and rode that thing up to whatever it got to. I think it peaked at about $500 a share because everybody moved to and pivoted to Zoom. So just some food for thought. It's okay to pivot. Sometimes we have to pivot. Sometimes we have to change the strategies, the ways that we're doing. Now, the fundamentals don't ever change. So I'm not talking about changing the fundamentals. And by the way, a great book, which is right here, right there, it's always, you can't see it, it may be back there. It's called The Success Principles by Jack Canfield. It's right behind me. It's always on my shelf back here. Is a great book on proven, timeless principles that never change. I think it should be in everybody's arsenal, everybody's library, because while the principles don't change, sometimes the strategies or the implementation of those principles do change. And sometimes market conditions force us to change. And we have to pivot to a different product, for example. Okay, I mean, I'll finish with this, for example. Like this is a real situation. So, with the way things have been the last couple of years, some companies have supply chain issues. Sometimes they can't get specific bottles or packaging or labeling or whatever, or maybe they can't get a key ingredient that was like your best-selling product, but you've got other products. Well, you may have been focusing on this, but we don't have this product in stock now because that ingredient, they're not going to have it for another 6 months. So you just go, I'm going to sit on the sidelines and wait. No, you pivot. You pivot to a different product in your arsenal, and you focus on that. And then when that one comes back in, you can add that back in. So there's a lot of different things that we need to be aware of, but a pivot is something to be okay with, to embrace when necessary. Again, don't pivot when you don't need to pivot, but know that you can pivot when you need to pivot. And if what you're doing is working, keep doing it. Like, and I know you guys have heard me say this. I don't care. What one definition of success is repeat what works, delete what doesn't. Repeat what works, delete what doesn't. So if you're doing something and it's working, do it and do it and do it. If you're doing something or you try something new and it's not working, okay, well, I did this enough times. I already know it's not working. I'm not going to do it again. Get that one out of there and go find something else. I'm going to do this. Oh, this one works too. This is cool. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. This works. This is great. So now I got another thing that's working. Then we try this other thing and it doesn't work, doesn't work, doesn't work. So you do the things that work. You stop doing the things that don't work. And then when whatever happens, and you're like, okay, we have to do things differently. You have to be willing to and ready to pivot. A pivot is just moving in a different direction and doing something slightly differently or significantly differently. So that's all I got for today, guys. Hope you're having an amazing day, an epic day. What's up, YouTubers? Appreciate you guys. My podcast folks, appreciate you as well. All the details on this episode and all sorts of other stuff right here, toddfalcone.com/episode 208. TODDFALCONE.com/episode 208. Have an amazing day. We'll see you.